We unexpectedly ended up in Paris, France, and it's a crazy story.
So yeah, we ended up in Paris by accident. Here's how it happened. Chris and I were scheduled to go on a British Isles cruise out of Southampton. We went a couple of days early into Scotland because we wanted to do some sightseeing in Edinburgh. It was the day before we were supposed to leave Scotland and head toward London, and we found out that our cruise was getting canceled due to bad weather. So we decided, all right, we'll make the best of it and we'll figure out what to do. We'll have a week in Europe, a land-based trip, completely unplanned. Saying, okay, now we have a 7-day land-based vacation in Europe. What are we going to do? And it's kind of overwhelming a little bit when you haven't planned anything. We ended up going on down to London, but we did want to get out of the UK because of the bad weather coming in. We ended up pit stopping in Bruges, Belgium, a place that Krista and I had both always wanted to visit. And by the way, Bruges was an awesome city. We have a good video on our channel about Bruges. Hopefully you take a look at that. But we still had like 5 days after Bruges to figure out what to do. There were several places that we thought about going, and everyone was a dead end. Everything was super expensive. It was last minute. Nothing really made sense. So Paris was close and wasn't that expensive to get to. And that's how we ended up in Paris. Now, I should say that neither one of us really wanted to go to Paris. Krista and I both love history. We love traveling around Europe. Paris just had never been really high on our list because we kind of thought that most of the main attractions in Paris were probably a little overrated and, for lack of better words, just kind of a tourist trap. So neither one of us really wanted to go there, but we ended up there.
Okay, so we are headed to Paris very last second, and we have very little time to plan what we're going to do. And that's tough, especially in popular tourist destinations. So we're going to let you know what we ended up doing, what sites we saw, and we're going to assign them all a passport stamp score. So they can earn up to 5 passport stamps based on what we thought of that site. So we're going to share that with you, and then also stay tuned to the end because we're going to tell you something else crazy that happened to us before the trip was over, as if it wasn't already crazy enough. All right, let's get into it.
So we arrived into Paris late at night and needed to figure out what are we going to do the next day. The one place in Paris that I had really wanted to see was Versailles. Krista, not so much, not big on her list, but I did talk her into going to Versailles the next day. So our expectation of Versailles going in was that we were going to tour a palace and we would probably be there 2 or 3 hours, and that was about it. It would be like any other palace tour or castle tour, and we've been on many of them. And we could not have been more wrong. So here's the thing about Versailles. Unless you already are pretty knowledgeable of Versailles, it's much bigger, it's much more overwhelming than you could ever imagine. You really have to be there in person to understand. But it's not just the palace, and the palace takes a while to get through, and it was awesome. We loved going through the palace. Quick warning, there are heavy crowds in the public tour. That is a thing. But other than that, we loved the palace tour, but what we were not prepared for was the Trianon estate, which we got the passport tickets that included all of the grounds and the Trianon estate. And we were very interested in it. We wanted to see everything. We tried. We just ran out of time. So the thing was with Versailles is we actually walked away loving it, frustrated because we were wanting to see everything and simply did not have enough time that day. We didn't get there until late morning. Even if you got there first thing in the morning, it would still be tough, but it's your only shot, I think. So we did walk away from Versailles thinking we need to come back here. We want to come back here when we have a full day, and that's why we will give Versailles 5 passport stamps.
All right, so the next day, the first thing on our agenda was to go to the Louvre. And if you have not heard of the Louvre, you've probably been living under the rock. It was actually just robbed recently, and not sure how they were able to pull that off, but it's the place with the big glass pyramid, and it's very Instagram worthy, and it houses the Mona Lisa. I think that's what it's most famous for. I wasn't all that excited to go there because I had heard the Mona Lisa was a little overrated. Now, I have to say, I agree with that. It is a small picture. You're not seeing a lot. It's not very big. It's underwhelming, and it is packed with crowds trying to get up close enough to get a picture of the Mona Lisa. But everything else there was amazing. And if you love art, if you love history like we do, there's so many historic artifacts. The Psyche revived by Cupid's kiss was my favorite sculpture there. I like the sculptures a little better than the paintings, I think, but overall, I mean, you could be there weeks and not see everything there was to see there. And we picked about 5 pieces we wanted to make sure to see while we were there, and just finding them was like an adventure. It was a maze, and so much fun just going and seeking out these pieces of art and looking at everything else on the way that I could have spent so long there. And I was really, 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 really happy with our time there. So I will give it 5 passport stamps also.
Okay, the next place in Paris that Krista and I decided to visit was the Conciergerie. So the Conciergerie was not a place that either one of us had ever heard of. We didn't know much about it at all. We found out a little bit about it as we were literally walking down the street, coming up on it, and we decided last second to check it out. So what this place is, it's not as well known as the other sites we visited probably, but what it was a medieval palace that later was used as a prison during the French Revolution. And that's really what it's kind of known for and famous for more so now. Its most famous prisoner was Marie Antoinette. She spent her last months there before she was ultimately beheaded. So we checked this place out, and here's what I will say about it. We really enjoyed it. I really liked it for a couple of different reasons. It does have a lot of history to it. It was a medieval palace, so the architecture is very interesting, and you get to see just enough of that to make it worth going. But the real reason that probably most people go is to see where the prison was and to see specifically where Marie Antoinette was held. And you can see where her cell was. It is now a chapel. It was turned into a chapel shortly after Napoleon's reign in kind of an effort to erase memories of the revolution. But it's not too crowded. It's not too expensive. I think it was only, I want to say 10 or 12 euros to go in. And it wasn't overly crowded like a lot of the Paris sites are. And it does have a lot of history to it. So for that reason, we would recommend this place too, and probably give it 4 passport stamps. If you are finding this video helpful or entertaining, we'd like to ask you to take just a couple of seconds and hit that like button, and also subscribe to our channel. We really appreciate it, and it helps us keep going.
All right, so the next place we visited, you've probably heard of, and that is the Eiffel Tower. Now, one thing that really surprised me about Paris was I just had the notion going into it that you could see the Eiffel Tower no matter where you were in Paris. Now, we stayed in the Latin Quarter, which is kind of close to Notre Dame and not too far from the Louvre. And we couldn't see the Eiffel Tower from any of these places that we had already been or from our hotel. So I was really anxious to see what the Eiffel Tower looked like in person. Now, I wasn't really sure I wanted to go up in it. I didn't think it would really be worth our time or money. But we went there and decided very last second, they had some tickets available. We went up to the very top of the Eiffel Tower. My favorite part of the whole thing was we had champagne at the top of the Eiffel Tower. Now, that champagne is not cheap. I will tell you that. It's your average, I think it was brut champagne, $35 a flute. But to drink champagne on the Eiffel Tower at the very top, with that view of Paris, I think is a once-in-a-lifetime must-do bucket list thing. For that reason, I will give it, I'm going to be generous, I'm going to say 5 passport stamps, but one time. I probably wouldn't do it again. It's kind of tough sometimes getting in the elevators, finding space, and it wasn't even that crowded of a day that we were there, and still we had a hard time, especially getting down. We actually walked down, which I do not recommend unless you are in very peak shape, because we were sore for days after that. But that's what I give it. I'm glad we did it, and I think everybody should do it once.
Okay, so after visiting the Eiffel Tower, the next thing Krista and I did was go on a Seine River cruise. These cruises, they are about an hour round trip up and down the Seine. They cost anywhere, I think they range from about 15 to 25 euros. And they are convenient, I'll say that. They run typically about every 20 minutes. There's boats leaving, and it's multiple locations as well. So it shouldn't be hard to find a ticket if that's something you want to do. So we did this at nighttime. We were hoping to see the Eiffel Tower sparkle, and we thought that we'll get great video, great pictures. That was our expectation going in. What we found out was getting on these boats is kind of luck of the draw. So there's lines that form as you are getting onto the boat. And like I said, there's boats coming every 15, 20 minutes. So they will have the line fill up the boat. And then wherever you are in line, you're either one of the first people getting on, maybe in the middle, or one of the last people getting on. And if you are in the middle, or even or especially one of the last people getting on, you might end up with not the greatest view on this boat. And several of the boats even have interiors kind of in the middle, to where you could be sitting in the middle behind people in the interior of the boat and really not have that great of a view. So it is a roll of the dice. And because of that, I thought the whole experience was a little bit overrated. I mean, it was fine, but definitely if I'm back in Paris, which I'm sure I will be, but this will not be on my must-do list again, like some of the other sites. So actually, I'm only giving this one 3 passport stamps.
Okay, so the last place we visited in Paris was the Notre-Dame Cathedral. Now, I will say, this is the other crazy part of our trip. We didn't think we were going to have time to go there. And we had an Uber scheduled to pick us up, to take us to the airport. And in the middle of the night, at some point, we get a text from the airline telling us that our flight was canceled and rescheduled for the next day. So all of a sudden, we now have an extra day in Paris. And we made the best of it. We got to go to Notre Dame. Admission here is free. Now, I will say they do recommend that you schedule it ahead of time, schedule a time to skip the line. We didn't get to do this because it was last second, but the line looked long and really only took us about 10-15 minutes to get into the cathedral. The cathedral is beautiful. It's very beautiful. Now, it did catch fire in 2019. It's still being restored. The tower is now back open. If you want to go in the tower, it's 10 to 15 euro to go up in the tower. I don't think it had quite opened yet when we were there. There is also the Treasury. It's a little museum off to the side. They do push the crowds all in one direction, and if you walk past that museum, it's over to the left right before you leave the cathedral. They don't want you to turn around and go back to go into that, and you buy tickets right when you go in there at the entrance of the Treasury. We tried that. They kind of fussed at us a little bit, so I will give you fair warning. It's over to the side. They have a crown of thorns that was supposedly worn by Jesus at his crucifixion. So it's got some really cool artifacts in there. I think it's worth seeing. I think it's about a 12 euro entrance fee. That's worth your time. Overall, Very beautiful cathedral, but there are a lot of beautiful cathedrals in Europe. Even some I may like a little better. So I probably am going to give it 4 passport stamps for that reason, but worth checking out if you're in Paris for sure.
So those are the main attractions that we visited in Paris, but overall, we were actually both blown away by our visit to Paris because we liked it so much. And the thing that was surprising was that it wasn't a place that was high on our list to go for whatever reason. We end up there by accident, and then we really enjoyed ourselves. And we enjoyed the whole city, really. We enjoyed the sights. We want to go back to the Louvre. We want to go back to Versailles for sure. And we enjoyed the sights, but we enjoyed the restaurants. We found people to be warm and friendly with us. We just had a good time in Paris.
We did, and I was taken there kicking and screaming. It was one of the last places I wanted to go in Europe for whatever reason. I think I like a little bit more ancient history than that, or more medieval, and I really loved it there. I will say the sights were better than I expected. I want to go back. People were not rude like you think they are, and we are not the most cultured of Americans, if you can't tell by our accents. And we were still well received. We've experienced ruder people at U.S. airports than what we experienced in Paris. I will say, make sure that you're informed. You are also polite. Use French when you can. Obviously, not bad French, but use it when you can. And I think that you'll fare well there also. So.
But we used very little French.
Yes.
And we still had no problem.
Right, exactly. And we did use Google Translate.
Yeah.
Always recommend Google Translate.
Right.
So we liked it. We enjoyed it. Overall, Paris, 5 passport stamps for me. I want to go back sometime very soon where we can do things a little better than we did them this time.
Yep. Best accident that ever happened to us traveling.
And we'll leave you with this quote from Thomas Jefferson, the founding father. A walkabout Paris will provide lessons in history, beauty, and in the point of life. And we at Travel Soul recommend that you go to Paris at least once in your life. So keep traveling, and we'll see you next time.